A Rottweiler was placed in front of a tiny kitten only 3 weeks old, with no history of being trained around cats. The dog had the strength to crush it in a single movement, but instead, something inside him seemed to change. He lowered his head, softened his body, lay down, and began licking the kitten with slow, careful strokes. Then the kitten crawled between his front legs, curled into the safest place it could find, and fell asleep. So the question becomes strange almost immediately. Did the dog understand that this was a baby? Researchers repeated the situation with other fragile animals. A baby rabbit, a duckling, and even a young orphaned fawn. Again and again the pattern returned. The dog became calmer, softer, more controlled around bodies he could easily harm. He was not rewarded for gentleness. He was not taught the meaning of baby, but his body seemed to know. The mystery is how an animal recognizes vulnerability in a creature from another species entirely. The first answer is written in the shape of infancy itself. Oversized eyes, rounded heads, small bodies, and uncertain movement. Across mammals, babies often share a similar design. A puppy, a human infant, and a seal pup all carry the same visual code. The head looks too large. The eyes sit too wide. The face appears soft, unfinished, and helpless. These proportions are not decorative. They are signals, ancient biological shortcuts designed to trigger protection before thought can interfere. Researchers at the University of Oxford once placed people in brain scanners and showed them images of infant faces. Within about 140 milliseconds, before conscious judgment fully formed, the brain's reward circuitry began to activate. The mind was not debating whether the baby deserved care. The nervous system had already begun moving toward protection. And the most important part was this: the reaction did not require the baby to be human. The proportions alone were powerful enough to speak to something older than language, culture, or deliberate morality. You cannot place a wild leopard calmly inside a brain scanner, but behavior can reveal what the brain refuses to say directly. In Kruger National Park, a female leopard killed a baboon in a tree, an ordinary hunt in a brutal ecosystem. But when the body fell, something else came down with it. A tiny baboon infant only a few weeks old. The leopard approached the infant and picked it up in her jaws, but not with the bite of a hunter. She used the careful carrying pressure predators use with their own young, enough to hold, not enough to kill. Then she carried the baby into cover, placed it down, and began grooming it with slow, deliberate movements. The infant even crawled toward her belly, trying to nurse from the very predator that had killed its mother. By morning, the infant was dead from exposure, because a leopard could not give what a baboon mother's body could. But the leopard had stayed through the night, and when hyenas approached, she moved the infant away from them. Biologically, this should make no sense. The infant was not hers, carried none of her genes. It could not reward her, help her, or become part of her future. Every moment spent protecting it cost energy. And yet, something about its small body and helpless movement seemed to override the predator that had been active minutes earlier. This recognition does not come only through sight. Babies also have a sound that travels across species. Infant distress cries in mammals often share the same architecture. High-pitched, urgent, repeated, rising at the end. In 2014, researchers at the University of Winnipeg tested this by playing baby cries from unfamiliar species in the wild. They played infant seal calls to deer and human baby cries to marmots, animals with no reason to know those species. Still, the adults approached the speakers. The sound was unfamiliar, but the message inside it was recognizable. The mammal brain was not asking, "Is this my baby?" It was asking something simpler, "Is this a baby?" But here is where the story becomes darker. Recognizing a baby and protecting a baby are not the same thing. Male langur monkeys have been observed killing infants after taking control of a group, not because they fail to recognize them. They recognize them precisely. The infants are vulnerable, dependent, and not genetically theirs. As long as those infants continue nursing, the females are less available for reproduction with the new male. So the same recognition system that can trigger care in one animal can trigger removal in another. Male lions have killed cubs after taking over prides. Dolphins have attacked calves. Bears and chimpanzees can do it too. That is the uncomfortable truth. The baby signal is powerful, but it does not always lead to mercy. Sometimes it activates protection. Sometimes it activates competition. Sometimes it identifies exactly what must be destroyed. But there are also moments where the signal crosses boundaries nature supposedly built to keep species separate. Primatologist Gilles Prouetz observed chimpanzees in Senegal accepting a young chimp from a completely different group. He was not kin. He did not belong to them. In many circumstances, an outsider would be treated as danger. But he was too young to be a threat, and the females groomed him, fed him, and kept him close. Dogs have nursed kittens. Cats have raised rabbits. Hens have incubated duck eggs and cared for ducklings after they hatched. These animals do not need a perfect genetic match to respond. The signal of infancy can be enough. And then one creature learned to exploit that ancient system with almost surgical precision. The common cuckoo. The cuckoo lays its egg inside another bird's nest, leaving strangers to raise a chick that is not theirs. When it hatches, the cuckoo chick often pushes the host's real eggs or babies out of the nest. Then it begins begging, and the host parent keeps feeding it, even as it grows far larger than its own offspring should. It does not need to look convincing. It only needs to sound urgent enough to hijack the caregiving system. Cambridge researchers found that one cuckoo chick can produce calls resembling an entire nest of hungry chicks crying at once. The host bird's brain responds to intensity. More desperate begging means more feeding, even when the situation is biologically absurd. A safety instinct becomes a doorway. What evolved to protect helpless life can also be used against the caregiver. So do animals know when another animal is a baby? The evidence points strongly toward yes. They see it in the face. They hear it in the cry. They read it in movement, size, softness, and helplessness. But what happens after recognition depends on the animal, the context, the hormones, the threat, and millions of years of evolution. Predator may go gentle. A rival may become dangerous. A stranger may become a caregiver. A parasite may become a false child. The recognition is real. The response is the mystery. And that is what makes the whole question feel strangely human. Because we are not the only creatures moved by the small, the helpless, and the unfinished. Long before compassion had a name, nature had already built a signal that could stop teeth before they closed. A dog can look at a duckling and become gentle. A leopard can sit beside the infant of its prey. A bird can be deceived by a cry. A mothering instinct can cross species, logic, and even survival itself. So yes, animals often know when something is a baby. But knowing is only the first door. What comes next can be care, danger, confusion, exploitation, or tenderness so strange it almost looks impossible. And perhaps the most haunting truth is this: the signal of infancy does not belong to one species. It belongs to life itself, whispering the same ancient message through fur, feathers, skin, cries, and trembling bodies. This is small. This is fragile. This is not ready for the world yet.